David James Schultz.
Hey. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I couldn't think of a better person to kick off this series with. So we're going to ask 10 questions, David. This is our Create 10 series. Of course, there might be a few slipped in there here and there. But we want to kick off with who were some of your major influences that made you want to be a filmmaker?
Sure. Okay, so the first one that I'm thinking of, or they sent up, was The Shining, especially, because this is like a pretty seismic film for me when I was super young. You know, I was like, as a kid, I was genuinely scared of every movie. You know, like saw like a Scream trailer and couldn't sleep for like, I was 5 and I couldn't sleep for like a week. So like I was already kind of horrified of horror.
Yes.
But sometimes, or like around like 12 is probably when I saw this movie just on cable one night. And was so like hypnotized by it, even though I was also terrified of it. And that just feels like there's something about it that is so hypnotic and so cool and so strange that I don't know, I was so like attracted to that as a thing and that as a feeling that I watched it just over and over again, even while still continuing to be horrified of almost everything else that I saw. There's something about this one that I think I only came to like later realize was because of how good the filmmaking is in general. And like it was truly Stanley Kubrick's choices as a filmmaker that make it such a cool and entrancing movie. Like, I think there's something about him too where I realized that this is the first time I ever figured out there was someone behind the camera, like making choices, like figuring out what it is that a director does. Because around the same time, I'd probably also seen A Clockwork Orange, which is a very like forbidden object when you're like 12 or 13.
Absolutely.
It's don't show it to a 12-year-old if you have the opportunity. But like the DVD cases of them looked so individual, and I was like, oh, that's definitely the same guy who did The Shining.
So
and you
that
can feel it instantly.
that aesthetic, you sort of...
It's the first time I remember being like, you know, you see other things and you don't really understand what it is that a director is doing. But like if you see Kubrick movies, you understand that there's somebody somewhere making choices that like that are affecting you as a viewer. And yeah, I've seen this probably like 60 times in my life, and I still think that there's like so many mysteries to it that are left in. And
is there one pivotal moment, or is there one like frame choice, or is there something particularly Kubrickian that you can talk to, particularly with this piece?
No, I mean it's the whole thing. It's a movie that I have kind of memorized like front and back at this point. So it'd be hard to like separate an individual
it's just
moment.
The whole...
But the whole thing just is, I don't know, it has such an individual atmosphere to it. And there's something about it, not just like aesthetically, it has a million great choices because he does a lot of things where there's center framing, there's lots of slow, meticulous zooms. There's an uncanniness to all of the details, kind of in the way that the camera is just looking at everything in that movie. But like at the same time, a joy of it is also like the script that almost, and the edit, nothing like fully connects in a way that like there are so many things left out that make it kind of an eternal enigma. Like you can never fully figure out the movie, and that's maybe the most beautiful thing about it.
I love it.
Feels like it'll exist forever without you fully wrapping your head around it.
Sure. And I think sometimes too, it's nice to have those pieces that aren't tied up with a bow. So there are those questions that are left, and it does leave you wanting more as a filmmaker and as an audience member. You know what I mean? So that's kind of nice.
It's a lingering, haunting feeling.
Definitely.
Which is.
Shall we move on to the next one? Okay, great. So the next one's Eraserhead.
Yes.
Tell us about that, David.
It's a striking image. David Lynch, the guy who like obviously went on to do Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, and a bunch of weird ass movies. That's kind of his thing. And that will probably be a theme today, is some weird ass movies. And he might be the king of them.
I think so.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But again, there's something about like how individual all of those things, like the atmosphere of that is so handcrafted and individual. It's I don't know, it's just a really beautiful thing, and it feels so dreamlike too, which is something I was really attracted to. especially around like 15, I think, when I first saw that probably. But that movie can really, it's a very specific atmosphere. It can really clear a room if you want to like, I was like, friends, let's watch some weird movies
Yes,
together.
right.
And it was just like me at the end of the screening. So don't show it like that. But if you want to watch a nightmarish movie, then that's definitely,
Yeah.
that's one of them. And I only mean nightmarish endearingly.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, and then There Will Be Blood.
Yes, Paul Thomas Anderson, who's a pretty astounding director. But this was the movie that I think I had seen when I was about 19. That I basically just dropped everything that I was studying and was like, I've been studying the wrong thing.
And what was that?
So I was a fine art major, so I was studying illustration and painting at UNH, University of New Haven, and I don't know. I kept like, I wanted my drawings to like move, so I was looking at animation, but I wanted them on a like bigger thing, and I got really into writing and sound and stuff too, and I was like, what am I looking for? And then I was like, fucking duh, it's movies, like a big screen, it's moving, it's a story, it has sound, and I think it was seeing this that just like helped solidify it, that it was, it's such a perfectly crafted like atmosphere and story and piece of acting. This film like looks gorgeous, it's shot beautifully. It's a perfectly crafted movie, you know, that again has a lot of rewards upon rewatch. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, especially if you want to drop everything that you're doing and keep studying movie making.
Excellent. So, would you please introduce your project to us?
Sure. My first feature is The Girl in the Straw Hat. Essentially, it's a genre-tinged drama, essentially about this couple where that they're kind of on the rocks, and they go out to this new age institute out on like the eastern end of Long Island, and essentially it ends up being a past life centric cult as it comes out over the course of the time that they're there, and one half of the couple gets really kind of sucked into this increasingly strange plot that happens and is unfolding, and it only gets darker and weirder from there.
My kind of film.
Yeah.
So shall we watch the trailer for that?
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
great.
So, Caitlin, tell me what's been going on with Thomas.
For a while now, Tommy hasn't really been himself.
Do you feel that? You are standing at the threshold of bliss. Thank you for purchasing the Star Level Self-Help Package, and welcome to Retreat Cabin number 2, your new home base for the next week.
Welcome, welcome. Oh my goodness. I see a lot of familiar faces. And some new ones, too.
Over the next week, you'll uncover the secrets of Alethea, but right now, rest up. Remember, distraction is the enemy of transcendence, and I'll be watching over you every step of the way. Tomorrow is the first day of the rest of your life. Happy healing. Dr. David Tilquin.
I think we should leave.
Children, lock the chain.
When did you stop taking your medication?
That's really between me and the doctor.
The doctor. There's a lot going on between him and you, isn't there? Tommy, you're being brainwashed by a bunch of fucking weirdos.
They're not fucking weirdos. Do you have any idea what leaving right now would do to me? After all the work I've been doing, the one fucking time that I feel like I'm alive.
I need you to trust me.
Tommy!
So, what do you love about shooting and directing, David?
Pretty much everything about it, honestly. It's really one of the best feelings in the world. Or I discovered that only when starting to really do it, that I do think that it's there's something about that is so kind of intoxicating, you know. I just love the idea of kind of organizing your thoughts about reality into some kind of story. It's just like, it's such a strange process to, you know, like in time be filming people saying these words that you write and kind of making this whole separate story. There's something about it that is just, it's a very odd thing to do, but at the same time, there's something about it that's so fun, and to really anticipate like how an audience is going to react to something, or, you know, how to get them involved in some kind of story. I don't know, there's something about organizing all of the chaos of a shoot and funneling it into this one specific thing and trying to get a tone and a musicality and everything that it just, I don't know, it's so fun.
Can you give us a glimpse of that process for you? Does it change from project to project, or is it something that you just, you know, fall into the same sort of routine in order to, you know, get the wheels turning and everything started?
I don't know. I mean, it probably is. It does change, I'm sure, with every single project. You know, it really depends. Like, obviously, the size and scale of this was way different than a bunch of like short films that I had done when I was in undergrad or when I was in grad school. This is such a larger thing and took, you know, a couple of years to put together because there were like delays because of COVID in finishing the shoot. So it's like, that was odd to try and stay mentally present and keep the project coherent throughout for a couple of years. Basically, it was a really strange thing to do. That I, you know, that's not ideal circumstances for shooting anything.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I always slip into a similar rhythm that I don't know, I feel very comfortable doing it. I like working with actors, and I like being surprised by them, and I love putting the camera like in the right place to try and film those actors.
So as far as your pre-production goes, you know, do you storyboard? Is this something where you're, you know, figuring out what that shot list is and then just jotting things down, or is it very formal? Like, what is that sort of process for you as well?
So it might not be a good thing to teach students,
right?
Don't
listen to any of this.
I don't do any of that.
Okay, great.
I really like to.
He doesn't do any of that.
Because I also really like the chaos that comes from it. Like, there's something about being. If you do that, you have to be really, really present on the set on the day, and so like hyper focused on the nuances of what your actors are doing, but making sure it's all cohesive. And like, there's something about watching that play out and then trying to find the best way to film it. It feels very alive and like a bit of like a tightrope walk, you know?
Has it always been like that for you, or did you try some of these tried and true processes?
I've tried those all. You know, I've storyboarded to a T, and then it felt really stilted to me. It didn't feel alive because I was just executing what was on a piece of paper. And I do think it's a thing that a lot of student filmmakers kind of do, and then they realize that they're not Alfred Hitchcock, and they like, it's really hard to, with no resources, get it to look exactly like it did in your head. And for me, it just became this process of discovering that I like it better when it's something that I kind of discover on the day. And that's not to say that I haven't thought it through a million times over.
And read your script and talked it over with people, your key crew and other ones.
Yeah, like I always just try and keep it like really focused on that scene, making that cinematically engaging, trying to find the good shots that'll do that, and also hoping that the writing is like, each scene has a place where it starts and a place where it ends, and knowing exactly emotionally what that is and the subtext of that thing, and then trying to capture that or communicate that in some way through the camera. And like, always knowing that at least if it starts here, then maybe it'll have this end shot. I might have an idea about like how I want it to leave it off, and then the rest of the day is kind of figuring out like, okay, but how do I now take the step back? And if it ends there, I know by contrast it has to start somewhere else.
Sure.
So I don't know, that just became a process of discovering how I liked doing that over years, but I've kind of settled into it, and I really that's the way that I like to do it the best,
Wonderful.
and it keeps you so present.
Yes,
which
yes.
is,
'Cause you're
which is the joy of
you're
the
discovering things along with your actors, along with your key crew, etc.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, it really does leave you open to, if something goes wrong, you know that you can handle it, because inevitably you go to a location and something's not 100% as what you thought it would be.
Yes.
Or it rains, or it does this, or that this
Right.
happens. So then it is a nice skill to be able to say, okay, now I can take that, I can throw that away. What I thought about, I got to really think on my feet now in order
Yeah.
to achieve the scene in maybe a slightly different way.
And that stuff happens all the time,
Yeah.
too. That, you show up on a day, and it's just not what you envisioned in your head.
Mm-hmm.
The lighting is different, because maybe you went and scouted a location, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, there's no sun when there was a full sun at,
Yeah.
sunset, and everything looked gorgeous, and you're like, this looks ugly as all sin today. I don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
Then maybe there's a better way to do that you didn't think of, and leaving yourself open to your own intuition
Mm-hmm.
and artistic impulses. Just, I don't know, it's a really satisfying thing to do. But that's also, I had a little bit of that probably from having a painting background
Sure,
too, that
uh-huh.
was already kind of in tune with just whatever artistic impulses were kind of flowing anyway, you
Yeah.
know. So that's just something I had carried with me for a while, but it's a good skill, I think, to work on, throughout shooting and discovering it.
Yeah, nice. So do you want to talk about what was your first shooting day like of the project?
We can, yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. So the first.
So we have a few stills of this as well.
Yeah, the first day was absolutely chaotic, essentially because it was the day where there were the most extras and actors involved. There was the biggest. That's the only day that I had probably 15-person crew, which was just
That's, yeah.
which was more significant than most of it, which it was a skeleton crew almost the entire
Right.
rest of the film. But this was the day where all of the all chips in. And it was the first day, so a movie is finding its footing. You're finding out what it looks like and what the actors are doing the first day. Sometimes it takes a bit to lock in step with it and find the groove of the movie and what it wants to feel like. So this was a day where suddenly I had to do all of these crowd scenes with all of these people, and there wasn't really. And again, I was just kind of feeling it out. I had some ideas about where I was going to go,
Yep.
but it was a much larger machine. So it was odd to kind of get in step with the movie this day, but I think it did, and it actually ended up being a really fun day because these extras were all really game to get very weird as the cult of the movie.
Excellent. And where did you get these extras from? Did you have a casting call, or was it through word of
it
mouth?
was just backstage that I just kind of
Great.
scattershot,
Oh,
just
wonderful.
and curated what faces I thought were
Yep.
interesting enough and,
Yep.
and odd enough to kind of fit the thing. It's not an insult to them. They just looked engaging
Yes.
on camera.
Yeah.
It was just an odd mix of people.
And where
then
was
they
this shot?
This was at the Stony Brook, Southampton
Okay,
campus.
and so everybody
Yeah.
had to travel out. Were they in the city?
A
Were they
lot
on
of
Long
them
Island?
were out there already.
Oh,
too. I tried to
fantastic.
cast locally just
Oh,
so people
beautiful.
had less of an excuse to bail.
Exactly. Yes, definitely.
Because there needed to be 12 people. It's
Yeah.
important,
For that.
number-wise, of the group. And so I think I got 14 or 15 responses and invited a bunch of people, but only 12 ended up actually showing
wow,
up.
great.
And it was just the right number, which was kind of a frightening
Yes.
thing. Because if they don't show up, you're just I don't have a movie,
Well,
you know.
could pull the PA or something like that.
And I would have.
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
Yeah.
The PA gets a role all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about this.
So this was this was an odd scene to do just because this was the second day. I was supposed to shoot one last scene where there's this mixer that these are the two lead actors, and this is their first time kind of seeing the cult at this mixer type thing, and we just didn't have enough time because there were so many big crowd scenes that we had to do that first day that I didn't get to film, so we had to film one half of it of the room with all of the extras in it the night before, and then this is the following day where we had to try and match the lighting, and they're in essentially an empty room, but you have to do it with sound and the way that you shoot it, try and connect two different days together, which is again, it's movie magic stuff, but it's
Yep.
it feels like an impossible task. This won't ever read.
Right, right.
But then it does.
With a little post-production magic, probably, right?
Yeah. But it,
And how about this?
this is that is
It's a great shot.
That is, it really is. We had a really good still photographer.
Yeah.
She's a sports photographer. She
Yeah.
got all the good stuff. But yeah, this woman, Camille, is a really, really funny actress. And this is just a scene of her berating my poor lead, who is not in on the cult mentality. And this is her kind of like a dog claiming her territory, just slapping this cup out of the way. And it's, you know. It's
So was that found in the moment, or was that something that you wrote as action in your screenplay?
Oh, I wrote it as action. It was going to be even more insane, but then we just added this kind of cup of water, and it's a really fun moment because it's such an incredibly bizarre thing to do in general. So I think Camille had a ton of fun because she just got to slap cups towards the camera all day. So they were just giant. It's a lot of water to clean up.
And then we have probably the reverse of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. This is the earlier calm part of the scene.
Yeah.
Before it really,
where she's not slapping water cups.
She's not. Yeah, they're drinking water.
Yeah. All right. So what is the biggest surprise about the filmmaking process for you?
I would probably say that it's just knowing learning how many plates you have to keep spinning at all times, basically. That there's so many things that your brain has to be engaged with while making something, from the practicalities of just making sure everyone is going to get there. And you know, this is especially true just like on micro budget filmmaking, that you really have to be aware of how everyone is going to get there. And even just like the tiny factors then of but what car are they going to take and where are they going to park the car? Beyond all of the other massive creative decisions that you're also making, and how it's going to play 2 years from now when it's finally finished in the context of a full film. So there's just so many things practically and creatively that you have to just keep in your head all at once, but also try and stay present. So there's something about the headspace of that can be overwhelming, but at the same time you feel like you're firing on all cylinders, because I think there's a lot of adrenaline that does come with it too. Sure. But it is surprising, especially when the scope of the project keeps getting larger, of how many things you need to constantly keep. You're just keeping balls in the air the entire time and making sure everything just lands. Yeah. And it's a difficult thing.
So what was it like though? Because you had successfully made many short films and at the MFA program, then transitioning to an actual feature. Did it seem that different, or was it easy because you've done all those short films and you knew you had to keep all these things in your head?
I had gotten a taste for it at this point. I knew kind of vaguely what to expect, but it was still. It's still just, it's such a large operation that it just, it was kind of just bigger and more, it was like the sequel of making those shorts. That it just feels like, Jesus, this is so much larger.
You did have a producer on this that was, that was helpful to take some of those plates that were, but not all of them, because the director still, especially when you're a writer, director, producer, you're still involved with all of those pieces and parts, no matter what. It's what gets you up in the middle of the night and you're like, I have to put this down. I have to remember this. Yeah, so. All right, so let's watch this clip.
So, I feel like James
That looks good. Yeah. What's that? That's just a bit turn.
Nice. So exactly what you're doing is lovely. Just shift slightly a little. Yeah, there you go. That's it. And tilt your head a little over to your. Hold on. I'm just gonna adjust your hair a little. Just one more thing. So my hair's a little crazy today.
It's it's full of life.
Yeah, there you go. And just come a little more towards me with your upper body. That's it. Stay right Still straight into the camera though.
Oh yeah, sorry. I think I thought I saw somebody in the hallway just now.
Oh, I thought the door was. Can you? Sorry, can you check
I'll
it
check.
out?
Sure.
Thanks.
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
That's nice.
Hello? Hello?
All right. So tell us a little bit about that. You know, as far as the narrative, what we're looking at as well.
Essentially, this is like the first part of when the narrative really kind of opens up, where essentially these past life centric cult people are trying to find out what certain people they're obsessed with mean to their life. So like in their minds, they're like heroes are investigating this thing, but in real life, they're obviously absolute creeps. You know, and it starts to feel much more like a horror movie at that point. Since we're getting, you know, a lot of like voyeurism and stuff like that too. This is like where it becomes a really a darker movie, you know. But yeah, this was kind of reverse engineered because the movie had to like open up, and those two are luckily the ones who are running the photo studio are friends of mine who are both good actors and also own that photo studio.
Yep.
So it was just like, how can we can get in there at any time to film this thing, which we had to do at like off hours, obviously, you know, or you're allowed to film outside on the streets before then, but this was just at like after hours in this building at night. And yeah, you just kind of write it backwards. And luckily they have the space and they're both actors, so it was just like a great resource to tap into, you know, that you can pull from parts of your life to just sort of like make these things work, you know. It's a lot of reverse engineering, you know.
Yeah, you start to really think about what your resources that are in your community of people that you know, as well as then, you know, maybe they know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, that you can capitalize on that as well for your films. And that's what independent film is all about. It's all about calling in favors of different people. And I know I've done that quite a bit, and I know you have too. So yeah, that's nice. So what's the toughest thing about getting a project done? Do you mind if we hear from James Sharp?
Please.
First, he's the producer, and he was able to zoom in. He's teaching down in Alabama right now, but he was able to provide this.
Hello, Stony Brook. My name is James Sharp, and I'm a producer, director, actor. I began acting on television shows in 2002 in Los Angeles. I directed my first short film in 2012, which began playing various festivals across the West Coast. I continued directing short film projects. I would say as a director, my aesthetic is European art films. And I began producing independent feature films in 2017, the most recent of which is The Girl in the Straw Hat. And I would say very simply, making sure that you have a locked script and that the locked script is completely in sync or in alignment with the available assets / available budget. Because if those two never meet, it's going to be challenging from start to finish. So that's really the most challenging thing about getting a project done in my mind is making sure those two aspects are synced up. It's like going to buy a car. You've only got so much money, and you have to make sure you're buying the best car with the available dollars. So, I mean, it's just sort of business 101, if you will. I would say the most difficult thing about getting David's project done is finding a CRT television in remote upstate New York. Apparently everybody does flat screen now, so that was that was the single most challenging aspect of David's production. Otherwise, it was pretty seamless, very smooth, free flowing, very creative, wonderful experience. So, if you happen to have everything in lockstep, projects, just set your alarm clock, wake up when you have to, and go to work.
And David, what do you think some of the toughest things are, or one tough thing of making a film?
I would say that also like just the stamina of doing it is certainly one thing, of just trying to keep it going and, you know, keep like just waking up and doing the stuff. Like it takes a ton of energy to do it, and you get truly exhausted. Like I was also like operating the camera for almost the entire time.
Yeah, how many pounds is that camera?
It can get up to like 30 pounds when it's full of everything like that. But if you have it on your shoulder for, you know, 8 hours a day, and I'm you know, I shouldn't be holding something like that for 8 hours a day every day. You know, I look like a small bird. You know, so it was, you know, it's an incredibly, like, that's just a taxing physical thing. But also sometimes you need to shoot late nights. Some days can go long. I try not to do that as much because you know, people get exhausted, especially if they're like underpaid. You know, but yeah, it's physically taxing. And then the hardest thing probably though is just was preparing everything beforehand. Less difficult during the actual shoot, but like getting these resources together was hard. You know, like that it became trying to get every single location was a thing that James and I, permits is an absolute nightmare. The bureaucracy of like an institution like that to get park permits is
and
really,
you can't shoot in these places without them. I mean, you have to be covered when you roll up to a place.
Yeah, if you're going in with like an iPhone or something, you can, but like you know, if you start bringing in real equipment, you really need to.
Because it's too obvious. You can't hide everything in a bag.
You can't. Yeah, no, it's very obvious what you're doing. So it just was like a slow process of getting every single prop and every location ready to go, and that's just it took a lot to do that. But in the end, it was, you know, it's obviously rewarding.
Of course,
you know?
when you start to put it together. So what was your source of inspiration for this particular film?
I mean, a couple things. I mean, there was obviously like, you know, there's usually a big bang of ideas of like, you know, one thing was just everyone I knew around me, like approaching 30, was also like either in like really horrific depressive states, or there was also relationships that went on too long, and that was like a catalyst, like just kind of watching that from a lot of people that I knew and stuff like that. And then there was a book that I read that had this kind of past life element to it, called The Silence of the Sirens, which is a really great thing, and that kicked off some of it. But then there was just a couple of movies that I'd also been watching, one of which is Robert Altman's Images, which is like his one attempt at a horror-ish kind of film. You know, he did other things like you know, Nashville and The Long Goodbye and MASH and a bunch of really great things, but this is his one attempt at this like cerebral, really strange, playful horror film. So yeah.
Terrific. And then we're going to watch a clip from this particular film.
You don't mind going down alone, do you?
No.
Light a fire, I won't be long. You got the keys, don't you?
Yeah.
All right, nice. So what particularly in this clip that you selected did you want to relay to our students?
I mean, I think like it doesn't seem like much maybe out of context of the movie, but essentially what it is this, it's just a transition between the top of this mountain and the house that's at the bottom of it, in which she sees herself at the bottom, and it's the first time the film indicates that something is horribly wrong or is going to go wrong, and start playing with like the mental subjectivity of this woman who's kind of just like, you know, kind of comes undone during the course of the film. And it's just a really clever and creative and simple way to do it. It's not particularly hard to do something like that, you know, it's just done with cutting in the right angles. But there's something about it that the movie is so playful in the way that it chooses to start screwing with the audience to communicate what this character's going through. I don't know, it's just a very clever and simple way to get from one place to the other, and also like underline the themes of the film and start introducing it that way. And I just, you know, that also shot by Vilmos Zsigmond, who's like one of the great cinematographers ever. And so just like there's some beautiful, just haunting imagery that I still just love and kind of, you know, drool over every time that I see, you know, like that little silhouette on the top of the mountain is gorgeous.
Yeah,
you know?
really wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, and then the next one?
Yeah, this is a really overlooked
I'd never heard of
horror film from the 70s that I love, called Let's Scare Jessica to Death, which is a fantastic title for a movie. I love this tagline too. Something's after Jessica. Something very cold, very wet, and very dead. It's certainly a you know, there's camp to the movie because it's a low budget horror-y thing. You know, there's a little cheese on there, but at the same time, it's again, it's really resourcefully made. It's not made for much money at all, even though Paramount released it. But yeah, it's just, again, it's so playful, and it's also clearly influenced by like European art house greats like Bergman and stuff like that too. And you can tell that it's someone trying to make like schlocky horror, but through this kind of like artistic European lens. So it's just like, I don't know, it also has a lot of fun, kind of lo-fi, playful elements, which is something that when you're making movies with no budget, you have to think about how to make things fun and engaging and creepy. So
well, let's take a look at that clip too.
Stay. Stay. Stay, Jessica. Stay. You're home now.
So that's the end of that clip. So thank you for sharing both of those. I definitely recommend you check both out because they'd be nice to open up your film world. Did you do the work yourself in post-production for color, sound, editing, music composition, and all of that good stuff? Did you hire out? You know, what was your process for post-production, David?
It was pretty much all me. Most of it was me.
And so how long did that take?
about a year.
About a year.
About a year, roughly. You know, that it was like between editing it and then you obviously do multiple passes, so you re-edit multiple times, you know, to make sure that it's right. But I mean, that's not common. You should work with each other, with other people interested in this. But it was mostly like a very practical reason to do this, is that it's expensive, and I didn't have I had time, but I didn't have. You don't want to inconvenience people, and you don't want you want to work with other people too, but sometimes just this wasn't in place for this one, so it just had to get done, and the only person that would do it until it was right was me, you know, even if that means, not that I'm by any means the best at any of those jobs, but it was just like, I can spend as much time as I need to get this right, you know? So that just was the driving force behind it.
And now you have amazing skill sets in all of those things that you can keep building on and expanding on. So it was a good lesson, but the resources are incredible for post-production. A lot of people will have the money to shoot, and then they realize, oh, we didn't save any money to finish this film. And so it becomes a really huge deal.
It truly is, because you need pretty much, I would say almost a match of the budget, basically, of what you're shooting to actually finish the thing. And depending on how you want to finish it, too. If there's effect shots, if there's any VFX, if you want to finish in certain ways, you know, that like there are just multiple different programs or ways to actually just finish the film. And then even showing the film theatrically, it costs money to create like DCPs to show, which is what a file that a projector can read, in an actual movie theater. So even those can cost $1,400, you know, just for that. So I just had to go and make those things. Where you're just keep adding on to something, which basically it's now almost double the budget of what we actually shot the thing for, just for finishing materials. Right. Let alone if you had to actually pay someone a working wage to do those things.
Yeah, because post-production, prices are way up there because they are so specialized.
Yeah. The only thing that I did have was a sound mixer that I did the sound editing.
Okay.
But I had a sound mixer that I handed it off to like a baton pass, that was because I don't know technically how sound is going to sound in a theater.
Sure.
That I was I can get it so far. I can't get it to this acceptable theatrical standard, for it to play in actual movie theaters. So
may I ask what that cost you? What it was to engage that person?
It was kind of a handshake bargain to do it, because it's someone that I do know. But he does a lot of stuff. He does a lot of things for Netflix and stuff like that. So he's a solid mixer. But he did it for under $5,000.
Oh, that's great.
Which was really nice.
Yeah, that was very nice.
Yeah,
and a lot of times too, these people work commercially, so to be able to work on a narrative piece is just so exciting for them, because it's like being a kid in a candy store. You did all the hard work on all these other unfulfilling projects, but then when you go to a narrative piece such as David's, it's like, oh, I get to have fun with this.
Yeah, sound people, if they're working on commercials, and then you tell them you're doing some stuff where there's you get to do trippy sound things, and they freak out.
There's just I'll pay you to do this.
Yeah.
Which would be nice. All right, so what is your favorite film today, and why?
Yeah, so the thought of a favorite film is a difficult one.
Just today.
Just today.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be of all time.
Yeah, I can't say of all time, because it changes every day. If you
so
watch.
shall we hear from James Sharp first, and then we'll watch a clip that you provided?
Sharp, yes.
Okay, let's listen to James.
It's actually a film from 2019, and I recently discovered it. It's called About Endlessness. It's a Swedish film by the director Roy Andersson. I guess it's Anderson is what we say, but anyway, it's a beautiful little film, a series of sort of existential tableaus about endlessness. If you like European art house films, check it out.
Är det inte fantastiskt ändå?
Vilka då?
Allt. Allt. Allt är fantastiskt.
Jo.
Göra när man har förlorat sin tro.
Det är redan september.
Great movie.
Yeah.
I saw it in theaters when it came out. It was really
I
great.
really want to see it now that I've seen it.
Every shot is hand built. There's not like those aren't city streets. They're everything is a set. So they're incredible objects. Like each one's like a diorama almost.
Amazing.
Incredible.
Very cool. So can you tell us about the film that you selected here?
Yeah, so this is one that's been kind of on my mind for a while. It's a really great thing. It's from Senegal. It's a Senegalese film by Madi Diop, and it's called Atlantics. It is on Netflix at this point, but it's this really wonderful like love ghost story, but it's really like it's not horror. It's a like kind of political, and it's very dreamlike, and it's really 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 beautiful. And there's a lot of good films coming out of Senegal right now too, and I think she's probably at the forefront of that.
Nice. Let's watch the clip.
Est-ce que xam nga ni da nga war a marié wu dans 10 jours ak Omar ci kanamu yàlla.
Maria man dama bëgg Souleymane.
3 mois fay ñu ko xam naa ne 4e mois bi ñu xala leen ak bu mag la.
Sànq ba léegi maa lay gis lan la. Bàyyi ma guddi rek bàyyi ma guddi maa ngi dem.
Ada xale góor yi dem na.
Lan.
Xale góor yi dem nañ géej jël nañu gaal Souleymane Cheikh ñoom ñëpp dem nañ.
Inspecteur Issa Diop, il va charger de l'enquête.
Souleymane ñu nekk di ko seet pour crime bu mu def te danga ko nekk di jàppale li nga def lu rëy la.
dafa dem géej depuis une semaine.
non demul géej démb ci ay boori 22 heures gis nañ ko.
Souleymane mu ngi fi.
lii lan la.
démb si guddi am na lu ma yëg sama yaram.
kii Souleymane la man xam naa ne moom la sentir naa ko.
So what's next for you, David? This is our final question, and then we're going to open up to you guys if you have any questions as well.
Immediately next is I'm probably going to eat some of the leftover
pizza.
In the
Fabulous.
back.
That's a good idea.
But now I'm just kind of sitting on some scripts. I mean, this is, I can't technically say since it's being recorded, but it's going to a festival that's going to premiere at the end of October.
Great. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully it can rack up a few more. And then from there, hopefully this film can like get some distribution and go on a streaming service, you know? And then, I don't know, at that point, the next thing is getting these next couple of scripts produced. That's the hope, while also trying to make a living editing crappy commercials.
Yes, you got to do some of that hard stuff in between.
Yeah.
But can you tell us a little bit about what it was like preparing for festivals and to submit your films for a festival sort of run?
Yeah, I mean, it's a frightening endeavor because there's a lot of rejection too. You know, there's so many people making films, especially right now. There's so much like the democratization of the technology to make films is so wide now that just like, you know, anyone can make a good looking one. So there's a lot of submissions, but you know, if you research kind of the right festivals for your own movie, and, you know, because there are genre festivals, there are different kinds of small local things, whatever else it is. There's always something that'll probably take it if you have a good enough thing. and so hopefully, you know, they take it and you go and you can network with some really wonderful people, and
Yep.
it's really nice to show, you know, a movie in a theater full of people.
Yep.
You know, that's it. Just researching, then a lot of waiting. It's pretty expensive, so it is worth, like, you know, saving up some of that budget money to actually send to the festivals.
You have to definitely budget for your festival
Pricey.
submissions. It's very pricey. Yeah.
Right, because each one can cost anywhere from like $40 to like $100.
Exactly,
You know.
yeah.
So it's something to take into consideration
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, it's an essential part of the process. You know, you make these things and you want to share them with
They
with
have to be
people
shared.
and
They should
get
be shared.
legitimized and
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's a hard and exciting part of the process though too. You know.
Yes.
But yeah, and then it's hopefully
It's a whole
on to-
nother game. It's a whole nother game you're playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on to the next one, hopefully. you
Yes,
know?
exactly. That's
it.
what you want to get that support, and you want to get that check hopefully coming your way from financiers.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, I'd like to open it up to you guys. Does anybody have any questions for David? Anything that you observed? Keegan, do you have something?
Yeah. How do you determine if a project is finished? Like for me, like usually like overthinking is like a huge
Mhm.
thing, and like sometimes you just gotta like take yourself like out of the chair and say like this is finished. Like how would you determine if a project is like the best that it can be?
That's a good question, because you can go on infinitely trying to like rectify any single mistake and scrub anything out of it. On this one it was hard just because this is like a feature and there's so many scenes I had cut out and stuff like that too, that there's many different iterations of what this could have looked like, you know, like there's so many alternate versions of the thing, and I cut a lot of those things too, that sometimes there's 10 versions of one scene. I think at a certain point it just became relying on like the intuition that it was done. Like, sure, there's probably always a way for it to get better, but you can kind of torture yourself a little bit, like in your own head, trying to chase perfection as opposed to it just feeling right. And I think a lot of this was relying on this scene feels right now, you know, and it can fit with the whole thing and service the whole. So I don't know, it's kind of testing it out, and sometimes you have to sit with things for a little while to feel if it's done, but this, I think, was just a kind of intuition that it was done, you know, and it was time to move on to the next project.
Did you ask for notes from anybody or trusted people that you showed the cuts to different people?
Absolutely, yeah. Because my girlfriend's not a filmmaker, so I always show her things, and if she's fully disinterested, then it's a great like objective audience, because she just clearly doesn't care, and I'm like, well, that's good, because you're like a good representation of a general audience that like kind of just likes film but isn't as obsessed with it. So if something is really working, I can see how she's like responding to it, and that's a great like litmus test of how good or not the scene is, if it's really affecting her. But I did the same thing where I would screen cuts of it for friends, for different colleagues and stuff like that, or professors or whatnot, and just try and collect a bunch of notes and see if, you know, if they were feeling it, and if there's points when people really like were bored by something, or if they were really, you know, disengaged, that was a determining factor too. So
was there ever anything that you loved and you're like, oh, I don't want to part with this, but I have to give it the X?
There's like
a bunch.
50 of those. There's
I'm sorry.
full scenes.
I know what that feels like.
Yeah, but it's a certain point when it feels right.
Yes.
You know it has to go, and then you just kind of, you know, say bye to it.
I'll save that for my director's archive.
Yeah, exactly.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Jade?
When you like start making films early in your career, you kind of, at least I do, I kind of like cringe at like something you make. So when does that feeling stop? You felt like actually proud of what you made.
I don't know if it fully stops. Unfortunately, that there's still stuff, and there are things that I'm getting closer to it. I think that like there are scenes I'm really proud of in this one that I can like stand by, or long stretches of the film even, which is the first time that's probably happened to me, honestly. That usually I don't know, it goes away a little bit each time though, you know, as you start getting better at doing it, you know, from those like early college films that I was making, that like you know, I'd be sick to my stomach looking at some of those things now, you know. But I don't know, each thing got a little more ambitious and a little bit tighter, and you get a little better at each of the skill sets, and it does eventually like soften, you know. And this is the first project where I feel like I can at least put my name on it and be really happy with it and show it to people. But there's even still things in there that I'm like, ugh. It's not fully like a love fest with the thing, you know. I mean, there's people like John Carpenter with like, it's like 80s, made like 12 incredible movies.
Yeah.
Like 12 perfect ones out of like 20, and he hates all of them.
Yeah.
So like, you know, some people it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And for me, sometimes, I mean, I can't look at my footage for like 6 months. You know, I can't even go into editing. Like some people go right into editing and they're like, they can't wait to put it together. And I need so much distance from it before I am even relatively objective about the work that I've done. So that's a great question.
And it happens multiple times within the same project. There were points when I would like look at the edit when it was really early on, that like I think every time you do like the early cut before all the sound is in and the color is in and effects are in and whatnot, that like you I like you can really get discouraged because it doesn't look as good as you want it to. But after like kind of, you know, you polish the thing enough, and eventually you can hopefully just like put a stamp of approval on it and feel better about it. But it happens in the same project, you know. It was just so many times that I would be like, ugh, I can't look at this thing, and then you finally just like wax it out until hopefully all the bad stuff is out, and then you can get behind it and start to realize that it is working and it is flowing. But no, it's an emotional roller coaster.
Totally. Any other questions? Keegan, thanks.
Yeah, sorry if I'm just like asking.
No, it's great. We love it.
I noticed that like for all the inspirations that you showed us today, they were all like live action, like filmed live action movies. And you also mentioned that you were also like interested in like possibly like animating.
Yeah.
College. That might be something I'm interested in. So, were there other like works of art that were like animated that you like drew inspiration from to put into your work?
Probably not in this one in particular, but I mean, animation is something that's just very close to my heart in general. And like Fantastic Planet is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a sci-fi French animation that is so wonderfully strange and trippy. And that's kind of always a constant source of inspiration for me, because that's a film that just, again, I've like memorized front to back at this point. So weirdly enough, I was watching a lot of animation while directing this, because there's a weird thing that when you're shooting something that you can really, if you're like watching a bunch of live action movies similar to your movie, you start copying it, and that's not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So I would watch animation because it's harder to copy some of that stuff, obviously. But then again, I think I ended up even maybe doing that because now that I'm thinking out loud a little bit here, like Satoshi Kon is a great director. He did films like Perfect Blue and Paprika.
Oh, Paprika,
and Paprika's gorgeous. Tokyo Godfathers. And I was watching a lot of those while making this too. I'm pretty sure Perfect Blue rubbed off a little bit on this one, because that's a really, really, really incredible movie. And you can see people like Aronofsky rips that movie off all the time in Black Swan and a bunch of stuff that he's done. So yeah, I mean, it's good to get inspiration also just from every type of art form. You know, there were novels that informed this, paintings that informed this. I had like, Renoir paintings that I just had like in a little lookbook that I would remember for certain compositions and stuff like that. And yeah, it's good to just ingest stuff from all over the sphere, because you never know where good inspiration can come from, but it can really come from anywhere. But certainly animation is one place where it definitely comes from, you know. Yeah.
Great. Anybody else? One final question? Go ahead, Jasmine.
Yeah, so I think in my opinion, like finding the sound to your movie is like the hardest part for me personally. And like, how did you go about trying to create the background audio for your film or the sound?
Right. I took a long time with that, because sound is really important to me as an element of it, you know, and I wanted I like a really subjective sound space, meaning that I want the sound to feel like to be kind of affecting the audience in a way where it's reflective of like the character's headspace at the time. So if they're anxious, I want all the chairs to scrape, you know, a certain way, or like there to be like a really dissonant hum in the background of certain scenes. I want to make it an immersive environment that makes you unconsciously kind of affected by it. So it became just a process of really trying to hear what those spaces sound like that we were filming in, and then trying to recreate them. If there was a lot of creaking wood, you know, like in the footsteps, that was always a good thing for me that I love to put in. And like, you know, how much reverb is in a room is a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it depends on like what the film is, because, you know, not every film should sound like that, like, you know, as like dark and strange as we wanted ours to get, you know. You don't want to do a rom-com like that, you know, or something like that. But yeah, it's just a process of, I think, discovering so much about it and really just thinking about where the characters are at, and then how do you get the audience to maybe feel like that is a thing too, you know. But it's such a great tool to really further immerse everyone in. So I don't know, I think it just takes listening to like certain films that you really love and just see what they're doing. And
yeah, you could turn
like,
the picture off and just listen to the sound. It's
listening to a good soundscape is really, really informative of what they're doing, you know, and the way, especially like reverbs and little tricks are just so effective that anyone can do. You could do it on, you know, iMovie or Final Cut or something like that, and make things really sound effective and like they should, to, you know, affect the audience in the way that you want to affect them. But yeah.
Great questions. Thank you, everybody. So I just want to thank David. If you would all just thank David for coming and working with us today. It was such a great conversation, David. Really, thank you so much.